My name is Judy Kilgannon and I am the Climate Change Transformation Manager here at the Improvement Service, where my role is to embed climate change across our programmes and operations. Tackling climate change is one of the biggest challenges facing local government and a key priority for the Improvement Service. But really, what do we mean by climate change and how does this translate into policy and action at national and local level? And more importantly, I'd like to start the discussion on what role data can play in this complex agenda to deliver better decisions and outcomes for communities. So firstly, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on what we actually mean by climate change. The impacts are happening now, and so we must adapt whilst also considering how to mitigate future impacts, which is where the net zero targets come into play. And the key here is that both adaptation, adapting to the impacts of climate change, and mitigation, reducing emissions, are needed. I think this graphic demonstrates the wide range of the impacts of climate change, that yes, this is about flooding and infrastructure, but it's also about health and businesses, where our food and our energy comes from. And all the time we need to remember that it's often the most vulnerable that are the most impacted. So moving on, alongside these impacts, then yes, we do have the ambition and urgency to deliver a national target of a just transition to net zero by 2045. I think that we can often focus on that 2045 target, but there's also a national target of 75% reduction by 2030, which is going to take a huge effort, suddenly not that far away. And there are also a lot of local targets from councils coming in, some as early as 2025. So there's real urgency to act now. And alongside that, I would highlight the growing focus on the need for a just transition, to keep fairness for communities, businesses and individuals at the heart of how we deliver net zero. Really huge co-benefits of climate action for, say, the economy and health if delivered correctly. Now, there are ambitious targets, as I've said, and there's a huge number of policies, targets and legislation that underpin this, which stretch across every sector. And things, as you can see, are moving in the right direction with incremental change, but there's still a long way to go. Primarily we've been going for the low-hanging fruit, and to meet these targets there's a need for action now and really system-wide transformation. Local government has a legislative duty to be working to tackle climate change as a public body, and is a crucial partner, and also already working hard to drive this transformation. Take a moment just to reflect on some of the requirements and targets. I think we can often think of buildings and energy, but there's a real range of current and emerging requirements that are coming, and really want to get across that in order to meet these, it's only going to work if people work across councils, go beyond their service areas and even beyond the organisation and working with external partners. There's existing legislative annual reporting, and there's new guidance coming that's going to ask councils to do even more, particularly to highlight the requirement around how councils align spend plans and use resources to contribute to emissions targets. But as you can see here, there are targets and duties on biodiversity, on heat and energy, transport, waste planning, and these are just some of them, and really emphasize the dates that you can see here and the need for cross-cutting action. I think that the 20% reduction in car miles across Scotland by 2030 is a particularly interesting one. Transport is the largest emitting sector in Scotland, and this might appear quite a simple challenge, but it's very complex. Yes, it's about infrastructure, but it's also about behaviour change and community engagement. It's where people go to school, where they go to work and play, the houses they live in. And to really understand this and deliver that target, then we need data which is accurate and meaningful. Another key commitment to highlight that I think is very relevant is the commitment by Scottish Government to a 20-minute neighbourhood. So 20-minute neighbourhood is about living well locally, giving communities and residents the ability to meet most of their daily needs from within their own community. And alongside that, to have shared service delivery and that cross-sector working across public, private and voluntary partners. So this could be by walking, cycling or public transport. And again, I think it sounds quite simple, but really it is quite complicated in that some neighbourhoods may appear to have the service provision of a 20-minute neighbourhood, but they're not performing as these sort of walkable and thriving places. There's also variety on what you include as criteria to measure. 20 minutes does differ for different groups, and then there can be a bit of a sort of overly focus on measuring it, which is an issue. There could also be different barriers, in walking routes, such as rivers or dual carriageway roads, that mean that it's not functioning as the 20-minute neighbourhood it could be. And this really is why there's a need to interrogate the data and the experience behind policy commitments and interventions, and why data professionals really have such an important role to play in tackling this really urgent agenda. I'd like to move on just to reflect on what this means for you and your roles, and touch on a few examples. But really through these sessions and moving forward, I'm keen to hear from all of you on what this means in your area. Transformation is needed in planning, environment, transport, health, and all of this needs to be based on a clear understanding of the data and to have that cross, that working across councils. So this is a particular piece of work by Climate Ready Clyde, which may be familiar to some of you. It's a regional approach to understanding the risk and impact on communities, businesses and individuals, and then to use this to shape their action plan, which are now in the process of delivery. As you're well aware, there's no neat organisational area boundaries to climate change, or indeed many of the problems that are facing local authorities. And it's important to understand the connection between these different challenges, such as between economic development and climate risk. And as I've said, to take that step beyond just flooding to consider sort of flood disadvantage and who's being impacted by this, to then be able to take that targeted action and support people to adapt. As I've mentioned, it's important to bring together different policies and priorities, and that can happen through the data and using the data. So there's links between health, climate change and inequality to use that lens of fuel poverty. There are challenges in sort of how we define and understand that relationship, but again, Climate Ready Clyde did some work on how on where there's potential fuel poor households, which then again can be used to target support into different areas. Also interesting work, the opportunity to look at energy performance certificate ratings, and then to use this address level EPC data to then understand how to decarbonise the housing stock. So in summary, there's a huge potential of address data to shape policy and interventions, and bringing together climate change and address data professionals is really what this is about, and we're keen to hear from you about what is happening in your area and how we can work with you to develop that further. So a huge thank you for listening.